Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday evening, we invite outsider and transgressive writers to come and share their work with us. And it is Friday, and you know the deal. Let's get fucking moving here. Rudy is up first. A second, I'll put the here. And Rudy, do you want first of all, is your audio working and everything?
Audio is good, I think.
Do you want me to pin your special guest?
It doesn't matter, honestly.
I
Like
think
I said,
I think I'm gonna
either
pin
way,
your
it's a dead
special
dog.
guest.
So, yeah, cool, cool.
Okay. All right, Rudy. Floor is yours.
Okay, let me just do the post here. Sorry, I'm fucking up. Okay, so this one is from my Lady You Shot Me Substack, which is ekphratic poetry. Did I pronounce that right, Blick? I don't even know if I'm fucked up.
Anything you want works. I can't pronounce it either. I'm not sure. I'm not sure
You,
what the
you,
correct one is either. I always
you,
say Ephrakis, but it's Ephrakis. I don't know.
oh, okay. Yeah, I figure you're the resident ekphrasis expert, but
That's
I
some
yield to
residents.
your. But no, this one is called Operation Wandering Soul, a spirited review. So I was initially filled with irrational disquiet about the name of this piece, a fact reflected in the disorder of the page title. Apologies to my editor, Rod, who has always been willing to look from behind my eyes, preserving my vision in the umbra of self doubt. Editor's note accepted. I slipped into a malaise, considering what about myself I wanted to foreground, which is something that I consider rarely as man's best friend, four-legged vessel for bipeds' amusement. In my work as a dog, I never, ever, ever insert myself unless there's treat or legs not yet spread into a V to allow heavy petting, or a feline with a hedge-like stranglehold on the attention economy. But my critical work is more self-centered. Yes, my genus is Canis, my species C. familiaris, my occupation service dog, my preoccupation the well-mastered sounds of Tricket or Dark Side of the Moon, or the 1-2 punch of Judas Priest jawing between left and right channel in my monitors with haunting precision. Let me use that to segue into my review before Rod decides to relieve me of my cushy freelancer position with a head pat. Editor's note: good girl. Operation Wandering Soul is the fourth of Studio Ghibli's posthumous offerings. Offering, I think, is the operative word, as the departure of director Hayao Miyazaki from the corporeal realm has left the animation giant reeling and relegated its staff to the role of tomb guardians. In a promo interview for 2023's How Do You Live, Miyazaki mentioned life, death, the next world. But according to the Japanese Parapsychology Bureau and nearly every starved otaku who has kept unwanted vigil outside the studio's Tokyo address, he never crossed that threshold, remaining infamously, stubbornly at large inside Ghibli's corridors. His son, Goro, arms full with his own endeavors, is said to make daily pilgrimages to the premises to attempt exorcisms of his father's ghost. He is grappling with loss, throwing fits, a ball of nerves, but such is nature. And his father is watching him always, along with the nearly 140 persons still employed at Ghibli. Hayao is present in the background, giving direction, declaring things to be finished. His venerable hollow eyes scan the in-betweens, all-seeing, peeling back the onion skin of existence itself to reveal his own kind of truth. His apparition is seen near the cloakroom at times near the women's bathroom with a stern expression that is a warning to those who trespass others. His hands, visible if you squint, reach through the ether to move pencils and tracing paper, though rarely glowing tablets. To the living, he leaves little trace, 0 marks, yet he is still prolific as an animator of films, of short works, of other objects his will alone enchants into kinesis. Dead auteurs have been controversial throughout history, though in the distant past they were probably not conscious of such things. The Ghibli patriarch is just one holdover, one in a dynasty of men and women whose potential energy, PE, exceeded the ability of a slowly cooling universe to scatter them into entropy. Personally, my intellectual curiosity outshines my gut feelings of distaste for people who dare to thwart death's cycle. I have an eye, too, if you believe Paul Klee, an animal behaviorist, for auteurs of all kinds. I'm a critic, for God's sake. Just don't ask me to watch a Wes Anderson. Films are a great vehicle for life-death exploration, especially when they put along with caution, mindful of those low to the ground. Operation Wandering Soul feels like a movie created to wrangle with troublesome ghosts of the past in multiple senses. The main action centers around the ham-fisted efforts of the 6th Psychological Operations Battalion to conduct acoustic occult rituals that will summon the ghosts of the dead and achieve a United States victory in Vietnam. The film is a deconstruction of military adventurism, America's obsession with highly technical warcraft, and capitalist ideals about death. Tonally, it is whimsical with a touch of black, replicating and intensifying some of the war themes from Howl's Moving Castle, but dipping frequently into the winsome preternatural imagery that made Pom Poko a hit. The protagonist is a young Viet Cong named Trang, who, in typical Ghibli fashion, is an effigy for the timeless feelings of inadequacy that boo those performing their youth under fire. She is keenly intelligent, but, like the real-life Operation Wandering Soul, she has trouble with the weird alchemy of transfiguring intelligence into persuasion. She is stilted, awkward in her dealings with her commander, the brash Dung, who is a confident foil to her hesitant, easily discouraged temperament. American weapons hit the soul first, Dung elucidates in an early scene where Trang laments the speed and shock of United States air power. Now, obviously, OWS, like all of Ghibli's titles, is gorgeous. The movie, first introduced in an NHK netcast last year, reemerged as a surprise coming soon, earlier this spring, just in time for the legions of Otacon to begin spinning up a Charlotte's Web of praise and, as is barely fitting, cosplay gear. And incensed Miyazaki remarked, "What good is all that plastic crap? You might as well build a chastity belt." Clearly, the crisp visuals serenade the rods and cones. Wartime rice paddies swaying, specters cavorting in the rainforest and down the Mekong Delta, helicopters flying in formation, rotors leaving wakes, in gentle brown rivers, stateside families leaving wakes, and the deceased soldier waking when called by his master's voice, returning from the shimmer of elsewhere. Surely this movie's tame brushstrokes will inspire many, but this is how I see things. As a pooch of my status, it's difficult to watch movies in the theater. There are logistical and institutional issues that make this complex, and those are largely out of scope for this review. When I can catch a show, the screen looks, roughly, like the image above, which I'm assured is less whiz-bang than the one that my publication has chosen to headline this article. My eyesight is simply not human. However, I can tell you, reader, what is human, or at least what is heartfelt in the justifiable spectacle of OWS. The sound design. My goodness. The experience of receiving fire from a gunship must have been an out-of-body experience for many North Vietnamese and Viet Cong fighters, engaging with an audible terror they could not see. This experience is perfectly reproduced, delivered with all the tremors and tremulous heart skips that come from being washed in bass, a state where the bass instincts take over. But as is appropriate for a film about a military operation with a sound payload, the musical score steals the show and has absolutely won over my heart and mind. Though jarring to me personally, Pierre Leduc's Tete-a-Tete is a brilliant percussive ensemble that integrates exploding fireworks with the rhythmic murmuring of Ella Fitzgerald-esque jazz act JQuery Bandits. The song punctuates a surreal, Kurtz-like monologue initiated by the villainous, but also based actually, General Horn, Strangelugs Jack Ripper via Elliot Page, in which a possessed, ominously red, again I'm told, phone relays orders to the war DJs raising ghosts as those same ghosts raise hell on the hairs on the back of my neck while raising fire bases and villages indiscriminately. It is a tremendous tandem of sound and optical fury that plays to my humble ears as distinctly anti-war, despite Miyazaki's persistent claim that his work is merely a toy, a Kong for audiences chomping at the bit for entertainment. Woof. The object permanence of endless war that seems to be the takeaway here is depressing and is made even more poignant by the work of visual sorcery looping the end and the beginning scenes of the film together. To this day, American involvement in Vietnam and other farmlands remains anything but transparent, even when it is. Old soldiers don't die, they just fade away, is the biotext on Douglas MacArthur's Twitter for a reason. His post-World War II struggle to maintain relevance echoes in eternity. The wily comic relief character featured on the cover gives a lucid response when Trang asks him about the meaning of armed conflict, breaking things down in a musical number, one of the film's best deployments of subversive ideology, upbeat swing dance paired with backmass nonsense vocals. War, a literal song and dance. I'm still enamored as my review screener copy Twilights. I've already set it to play again. Runtimes evaporating fast and just mwah. The closing gloom shrouding scantily visible credits and logos fading into the dawn of the opening flyover sequence and What If We Kissed at the combination epilogue preface. The weight of objects hits suddenly as my eyes refocus on their environment. House lights up. Temporality is hard on a bitch. The square container of my earthly burden is sitting on a desk, rods under some books, and a small cactus that I've heard is green. As green as I don't know what. At press time, I am deceased, very tired, waiting patiently for the next Ghibli, soulful as chicken soup broth poured over dry food, to spirit me away. And below you'll find the Midjourney images that I used to make the little the image there. And that's it.
Rudy, man, there's one joke in this bit in this poem that I 100% should have seen coming, 100% did not see coming, and that totally floored me. The moment when you insert the image of how the dog sees the Studio Ghibli movie.
Oh,
and it's so perfect because like of course like this fucking talking ghost dog is both like the best and worst equipped thing to review this film, right? Because on the one hand, yeah, like oh yeah, it's a fake Studio Ghibli film reviewed by a talking animal. Of course, that makes sense. And then it's like,
right.
But it's an animal that can appreciate the like one most important distinctive factor of Studio Ghibli works, which is the quality of the animation.
See, that's the thing. Like, that's why she says like the shit about the Wes Anderson or whatever, you know, like, hey, don't Wes Anderson because I can't appreciate the color. Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that when it went around the first time with the Wes Anderson thing. But of course, the dog can't appreciate Wes Anderson because
it's basically like
nothing there but the color.
Yeah, it's basically like a dog from Polygon review, you know, because it's Polygon shit. It's all about the reviewer themselves. It's like, well, hey, you know, I'm not trying to forefront myself here, but you know,
right. But I definitely am.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's brilliant. And of course, all the stuff about like Miyazaki being dead, but continuing to haunt the studio and his son and not moving on and being a general asshole is all very in keeping and all very funny.
Well, thanks.
But yeah, man, that was very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. So I don't think Sabrina is here yet. So Keith is up next.
Okay, getting ready. All right, thanks, William. Before reading my story tonight, I'm going to begin with a short introduction and a preface. The introduction. I wasn't planning on reading tonight since I read the long Saturday night honky tonk story last week, but plans changed. Over the course of the week, I was having a conversation with a friend about drug addiction. I told them that I'd written a story about that in my big story and I would share it with them if they wanted to see it. It was exactly about what we were discussing. It was in reference to their comment, "I'm terrified of getting addicted to those evil little suckers." My friend surprised me and said, "Read it this Friday, man." So after reviewing the piece and thinking about it, I decided to read it. The timing is right. But before I begin, here's a refresher on my big story, Living and Dying in the Now and Then, the surreal life of an aspiring writer. I started writing it back in January. It was my first ever long-form story. My first reading was on January 28th. Between that reading and April 15th, I read 7 more times. Because of what seemed like a flurry of one bad thing after another in late winter and early spring, I set the big story aside and went back to writing poetry and random short stories, depending on my mood or thoughts of the day. And then July came. And I just couldn't go back to it until now. So here's where I'll start tonight's reading. In my notes, I titled this Preface Number 2. I wrote it on February 24th, and I put it in the big story at that point. I'll read it first, then follow it with the next part of the story. Preface number 2. He needs to be able to provide a synopsis to his big story. It will be a second preface if that's allowable in writing. He doesn't know. He needs this synopsis for his public readings because when he has listened to others read their ongoing stories over several weeks, those readers always have a lead-in, and they are exceptionally good at sounding like they are extemporaneously speaking. He's not very good at that, so he'll just write out his words. Here they are. This is a story about writing a story. But more significantly, it is a story about a narrator's life in the present, the past, and the future. A narrator who is living in real and imagined worlds and who is comfortable yet uncomfortable, reliable yet unreliable, confident yet unconfident. A narrator who, like everyone, lives and dies and learns and unlearns their decisions in life. A narrator who, through the disclaimer of writing an experimental autofiction story, wanders here and there down different alleys of truth, fiction, despair, hope, sadness, happiness, seriousness, absurdity, and so many more alleys. In other words, maybe everything in his story is just a big mess, just like life can seem sometimes. He is exhilarated to the point of running out the front door and screaming to the world that he has just finished the ending scene in his big story. And after he screams, he'll tell about the revelation that he had about word counts. And it all came to him the afternoon of his promised second reading of his big story. The crazy thing was that it all happened during his intense cycling session as his spinning playlist blasted at him, and he came back to reality after 8 miles, Could it be any more prophetic when the cool down song was DJ Regard's Ride It? And he was riding it for sure right then as he remembered his DMs with the man. The ending to his big story is going to be great, and he has polished that ending in his head. Before he wrote this segment, he put a bunch of memory hooks in his notes file for his story's ending. And that other thing that he mentioned about the word count revelation was that he was going to quit looking at his word counts because that was time that he could spend thinking and dreaming and writing. And besides, he wasn't writing any of this to get paid by the word. He was writing because it was fun and exciting and challenging. But yes, he was watching those word counts early on to see where his poem to flash fiction to short story to long short story was going. But now it's over 17,000 words. And should anyone still want to listen to him read his story after his second reading, he has enough written right now to easily cover 4 weeks of reading. So there's no anxieties about material. He knows that his writing isn't about word count, though, but is really about telling his stories. And a 50-word poem may be more powerful than a 50,000-word novel. The important thing right now is to tell the story, and the number of words will just be what they are. And now he starts feeling a little less confident because he's heard about writer's block. But he has absolutely no firsthand knowledge about that condition because he was always just a reader and not a writer. He hopes that he doesn't learn about writer's block before he finishes his big story. And he prays that he hasn't jinxed himself with all of his braggadocious declarations about word count. And then he's really starts feeling stressed out. And he thinks he hears 21 pilots flying overhead, and he fears that there may be an attack on all the military bases surrounding him. But then he realizes it's only his imagination, and he's stressed out because all of this stemmed from a song on his spinning playlist that he was thinking about. And he may need to see his doctor about getting some meds for his condition. And now, for some reason, he's watching Kratom videos on YouTube. His second public reading did not happen as planned because his lit friend, who is the reading program host, was ill and had to postpone the readings until the next week. He feels sort of relieved because, boy, was he tired from his exhausting day that started at 2 a.m. that morning. He had been going for 18 straight hours, practicing and praying and getting all amped up about the second reading. He hopes that his lit friend gets to feeling better soon, and he'll check on him in a day or two to see how he's doing. Well, it's another day, and he has just finished another cycling session, and he's starting to see a pattern that the harder and harder he rides, that more and more pieces of his story are appearing in his mind. He feels old anxieties leaving his body. He feels new ones coming in. He's thinking once again about acceptance. And he knows that his stories about alcohol and tobacco and drugs and much of what he's writing about are really struggles with acceptance. And then he starts thinking about writing. And he's learning that one writer's story may be one reader's rejection and another reader's acceptance. And he believes that's how life really is. He thinks about how he learned to accept who he is. And he thinks about his dances with alcohol and how they may have begun with that first sip of beer he tried when they were sitting around the kitchen table. And then later he'd be holding cups of Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill, and Ripple, and Sterling Big Mouths, and Budweisers, and Wild Turkeys, and Zombies, and Hunch Punches, and Bloody Marys, and on, and the room is spinning, his head is hurting just thinking about those days and nights. He knows that it is only by a few good realizations and good fortune that he is even here today to be spilling these thoughts onto the page. And when he thinks about all of those times, in the end, he realizes that he was trying to hide his insecurities behind his vices, to shield the world and himself from his true being. When he began to see that his real friends and family and most people of the world accepted him without his vices, he began to realize that those vices were obstacles to a happier life. He learned to accept himself for who he was and how he lived his life, and what he did became more important to him. He realized that it was a good thing that he started learning lessons early in life, because it took and takes a long time to learn some of the lessons. And now, more than ever before, he realizes that school will never be out until the last bell of the day rings, and then the lessons will be over forever. As he relives the mornings of his life each day, he listens to songs from his past, and he wonders if there's anything more significant from those times than his perfection of the pull-out method, with all of the little guys ending up in his striped tube sock. But that's not what he's going to write about today, because there are more important things than thinking about all of the babies thrown out with the wash water. And then briefly, he has thoughts of someone showing up on his doorstep one day with their mother, and he needs to get those thoughts out of his head very quickly. So he's going to turn the music off and deflect and write about his mama and the many men in her life. But he can't get the music off quick enough. Wow, is he loving the Pandora algorithm right now? He's going to listen to this one last song, the Stylistics, You Make Me Feel Brand New. He feels the chills running through his body, tears welling up in his eyes, and he remembers the times they each felt brand new. He turns the music off and sits down to begin writing. Though it's a really nice story, he just can't write it this morning. He'll just have to write about his mama and her men another time. He cannot put it off any longer just because it makes him uncomfortable. He must write the next story. It will be very difficult, but it is very important. It connects some of the dots. Before he begins, he looks around his writing room. He sees the bag of kratom, unopened. He sees the bag of micronized kava kava, unopened. He thinks about the drugs that he doesn't have, but that he can easily obtain. He has friends of all ages that he knows that, reluctantly, they will help him or hurt him if he asks. But he doesn't want to put his friends in that position, and he has done so well fighting his demons for many years, and his close friends and family know that. He knew when he recently bought the kratom and kava kava that he would never use it, but he decided that he would have it on hand if in a weak moment the demons won a battle. And he rationalized that those two substances would be much better for him than the alternatives. He believes that. But this is not a story about him right now. It's a story about his friend. And it was his friend's story that triggered the beginning of the end of his drug days, before the fun became not fun. His tobacco experiences about his addictive personality never left his mind, and he was always extremely cautious with drugs and the frequency that he used them, even to this day, like with his prescription Ambien. He was afraid that with drugs that he was playing Russian roulette, and he didn't like that game because he is still traumatized from the Russian roulette scene in the 1979 movie, The Deer Hunter. His friend's name was Jimmy, and they became close when they were both in the early prime of their lives. He knew from the first time that they met that Jimmy did not drink, but he really, really liked to get high. Jimmy's drug of choice was weed, and that was in the times when weed wasn't like it is today, or so he has had friends tell him that. When Jimmy wasn't high, he was quiet, reserved, and shy. He was the type of guy that the grandmothers would say, "Jimmy, you're such a nice young man." And Jimmy was nice all of the time. As he came to know Jimmy and they were becoming friends, he could see himself in Jimmy. And even though he knew that he shouldn't judge Jimmy, he worried about him. Fast forward a few years, and like how so many things play out in life, time and distance get between friendships. But he and Jimmy never really drifted too far apart. It's hard to drift apart from yourself. They still talked occasionally, and they both had young families, and usually about once every year or two, they and their families would all get together. But the last get-together was different, and he felt it. Some of the things that Jimmy told him seemed unusual, but it was the things that Jimmy didn't tell him that worried him. He figured that this was all just another changing time in their lives and they were just riding the roller coaster together, and one was on the peak and the other in the dip. But about 6 months earlier, Jimmy had an accident at work and he had to stay at home for his recovery, and Jimmy was alone most of the time. Jimmy was still on disability and had lots of doctor visits, and he was still staying at home, but he was hoping to go back to work soon. He said that he really needed to be working. And then Jimmy told him about this new prescription drug that he had been taking. Aside. As I'm typing this, chills are running through my body. And that it was a really good drug, and Jimmy said that he liked it a lot. Aside. I've got to take a break for a minute before writing this next part. Jimmy said that the doctors had told him that even though the drug was new, it had been thoroughly tested and was completely safe to take, and it wasn't addictive, and the drug was so good that it would change his life. And Jimmy agreed. It had changed his life. And that's what Jimmy told him, and he had no reason to doubt him. But in the back of his mind, he knew that he and Jimmy were too much alike, and that's what worried him. So a few weeks after the reunion, and everyone was miles and miles apart, he was at his desk at work and his phone rang. He answered it, and it was Jimmy. Never in the years and years that they'd been living apart had Jimmy ever called him at work, and he immediately suspected that something was not right. Jimmy said that he just wanted to talk to someone, and he knew who would listen. Without going into all of the details, the call lasted for over an hour, and Jimmy did most of the talking. It just seemed to be a sadness and loneliness that by the end of the call, it turned cheerful and hopeful. Although he was concerned about Jimmy, he wasn't overly worried about him until the next call came a few days later. It was basically a repeat of the previous call without the cheerfulness and hopefulness. And he had told his wife about the first call, and then he told her about the second call, and they just kind of scratched their heads together. And he said that it just must be the drugs that Jimmy was taking. And they agreed because she had known Jimmy years before he knew him, and she knew him very well too. So everything was quiet for a couple of days until he got home from work one evening, and his wife told him that Jimmy had called her. His first thought was that since he had been in the field all day and hadn't been in the office, that's why he called her. And that was a bit concerning.
President Trump, if you see this, please save us.
But,
Continue.
okay, and that was a bit concerning. But after she relayed Jimmy's conversation to him, he knew what she knew, that something was very wrong. And so they both agreed to think about what to do, and they would decide the next day. And then the next day was too late. And the sadness and guilt that Jimmy left behind cannot be described with words. Jimmy's life ended quickly by his own hand. And when they went to the funeral, Jimmy's wife told them that it was that drug that did it. We didn't really know what to say or think about that at the time. But regardless, that was the life-changing event that was the beginning of the end of the dance with drugs for your narrator. It was the realization of many of how precious life is and that everything can all be gone in a moment. And then, decades later, the truth came out about that drug. And Jimmy's wife was right about that drug all along. And it's just so sad to think of Jimmy and of all the other lives lost and the families and friends affected forever by a drug. It was tragic. He's beginning to feel guilty and maybe even hypocritical. Sometimes he doesn't understand his feelings. He has to at least try to plead his case and be absolved, maybe. He's not trying to preach or guilt shame or make judgments in his writings. He's just telling stories of his life and the life of others that make him who he is today. And who we are today may not be who we are tomorrow or who we were yesterday. And that's how life has gone for him. One day he may write stories about his thoughts on decriminalizing drugs and the failed war on drugs and the pipeline to prison and the lack of enough funding for mental health and drug treatments and harm reduction and the shortcomings of what may happen when the masses all play follow the leader. And well, that's enough about what he may write about one day. Living and dying in the now and then isn't going to address those items. Well, at least not directly by intention. And he'll probably never write directly about that stuff. He'll just write his stories, and they will just be what they are, stories. Thanks for listening.
That was, sorry, excuse me, that was really powerful, Keith. I continue to be in awe of the way you structured these pieces. That this piece, like in particular, goes from being so lighthearted and funny to being completely heartbreaking in a second, over the course of like 2 sentences, and it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like just like, oh, these are 2 completely different pieces grafted together, right? It doesn't feel like a failure of editing. Instead, it feels like something that you've captured, something about the natural flow of life, right? And the natural flow of memory, especially, and thought, and the way our mind can go so quickly from life's like trivialities to real sadness and real pain. And I don't know, this is a really effective piece, Keith, as usual, and thank you for sharing it.
The thing about Keith's work that every time I hear it, it's like there's a soundtrack to it, which is Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade. It's almost like, he's almost like a Scheherazade with gonads, that he keeps on just going and going and makes these shifts, and he comes back, but it's one story unraveling like in a scroll. It's just a great unique style and voice. Congrats, Keith. I love your stuff.
Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it. Thanks, William, too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect way to put it, Flick. That kind of 1001 Nights quality of the endless story. That's actually a few separate stories, but there is that sense of like natural endlessness and eternal flow to it. That's really, really good. Yeah, thank you, Blick, and thank you, Keith. Jeff is up next. Jeff, you're still muted, just so you know.
Sorry about that. I'm
No
on my
problem.
shitty phone tonight. Yeah, so I have 2 little things. If the first one's too long, just I'll skip the second one. It's okay.
Oh no, there's plenty of time tonight.
Sweet. This one's something about the drought, and it's kind of negative. Praying, kneeling in front of a tree, asking for an answer. Everything is breaking. No air conditioning. My water pump overheated. The carb on the tractor is clogged with oil and dirt. Scum on my bandana. The beer is all gone. My eyes are red from sweat and chemicals. Goddamn radio keeps repeating. Rain on the scarecrow, blood on the plow. Rain on the scarecrow, blood on the plow. I can't turn it off. It gets louder with every swing of the axe. Chopping up dinner, building a fire, fixing a fence, breaking a chain, falling off a cliff. A social worker pushes me around, blind, without legs, in the heat of this satanic summer. I'm breaking my back trying to crawl to the lake. They said it was only 7 miles away, 7 more miles. What is left in it? What is left of it? My knees are bleeding. My brain has a satanic seizure. Blood on the scarecrow, rain on the plow. The snare keeps hammering. My heart is choking. My accountant is calling. My wife is sharpening the knives in the kitchen, preparing to feed my body to the children. Tiny sandwiches for a few more days. Knocking on heaven's door. Eating the cat's food. He's dead. Going off my meds so my kids can make it through this satanic season. Falling downstairs, making free jazz music, chewing on wire, eating the plastic, flossing my teeth with guitar strings, beating my face in the mirror, punching the brick wall down by the church. I can't guess the combination on my neighbor's safe. Breathing deep to wake up, smothering myself to sleep. Barking at the moon with the coyotes, starving for Jesus and screaming, he ain't coming back, he ain't coming back. Crying, looking for housing, filling out applications for some Cuban soap, choking down sand that I borrowed from the school's playground, smoking leaves from the dead bushes in the field, chasing down weasels for meat, driving a stolen car in the middle of America, hailing Mount Rushmore as I crash, waving to my mother, shaming my father and his family of farmers from way back when, going to hell, begging this satanic town. I'm on fire, keeping the children warm near my flame. So that was negative as fuck. This one's just goofy. I don't know how else to put it. This one I called the pepperoni problem. Some people have a pepperoni problem and they can't seem to accept the pepperoni problem, but they have a pepperoni problem. It starts with uncaring and neglect of the pepperoni problem. Some come to accept the pepperoni problem, not having it, not buying it, not having it on hand for a pizza or a midnight snack. Some are in denial about acid reflux and the medications the physicians will prescribe, not because of a pepperoni problem, but because doctors are lobbied by the corporations who sell medication to supposedly solve the pepperoni problem, but never succeed. The pepperoni problem is complex. It dates back to Italy, where the pepperoni was a staple. Some people did not take the pepperoni problem seriously, and as a result, suffered from the pepperoni problem. The real problem with the pepperoni itself. The pepperoni problem was part of the pepperoni itself and surplus of pepperoni in the marketplace. The pepperoni problem made people want pepperoni and at the same time express disgust at the smell of pepperoni. Then came Anthony, who ultimately solved the pepperoni problem, or so he thought, because even today we have a serious pepperoni problem. In the pizza parlors, in grocery stores, and at home with mama, there is a pepperoni problem. Mama reaches for tomatoes, for basil, for oil, then hits a wall with the pepperoni problem. Meat, casing, manufacturing the pepperoni. Can a woman get the pepperoni and take it home without there being a problem? St. Joseph only knows. But in their heart of hearts, there will always be a pepperoni problem. Not to mention cheese. There's also a provolone problem. It's not as serious as the pepperoni problem, so forget about it. But listen to me. there is a pepperoni problem. All right. There is one.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fucking great over here.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I'm laughing my ass off.
Oh my God, I
Brilliant.
know it.
Oh.
Jeff,
I'm half Italian.
Me too.
Bad.
Proud of it.
oh, I'm sorry. The contrast between those two fucking pieces, Jeff, is incredible.
Yeah.
You took me
Oh.
down so fucking low with that first poem, and that's a compliment. But I feel like, man, like obvious, like fuck, man, I feel like you really captured the vibe of this summer, because this has been an absolutely desperate, sad, like awful fucking summer. And I don't think just for me. I mean, obviously not universally, but certainly for me. And I think for a lot of people. And obviously, like, I'm not eating cat food, and I'm not you know, just like the way this poem escalates from one terrible thing, and you're like, how could it get more terrible than that? And then it's something even more terrible, and then by the end, the narrator is literally in hell, and you're like, well, but oh my God, I love the way the poem is structured. I love, like, every single fucking detail in that poem is incredibly evocative, and the natural progression of that poem from one terrible thing to another, to another, to another, to another, like, so perfectly captures, I think, like the psychology of this summer, and certainly the way I felt. And just like, but the way you flipped it with the pepperoni problem one after that, I was dying, man. I was absolutely fucking dying. I was choking. I don't know what to say about that poem, because I don't want to say something incredibly insensitive, but I will say it,
Go ahead.
it was really fucking funny.
Thanks, man. I find myself walking around the house saying that thing over and over. It's like, it's a bad song that gets stuck in your head, you know, the pepperoni problem.
Yeah.
So sorry if that happens.
Yeah, no, and man, I have acid reflux, so I know the pepperoni problem all too well.
That shit's fucked.
I was going to mention the GERDs is like the pepperoni problem, the ultimate pepperoni problem with no solution.
Sure.
No, that was awesome though. I love how like rhythmic and just how fucking like amazing that is. And the first one is bleak as fuck. I love how just somebody said it's haymaker after haymaker, it's a bunch of gut punches. It really just, man, that was amazing.
Thank you very much, Rudy. I was depressed when I wrote that. Not the pepperoni problem. It's just another thing.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Those were fucking awesome. So, I think Sabrina is here now. So, Sabrina can go up next.
All right, I can go. I have a squeaky chair that I just want to caution everyone about, and also my voice sounds weird to me because it's 3 a.m, but I'll just go. Okay. I had an edgy conversation with my sister 2 weeks ago on an Italian lake. Lounge chairs, umbrella tables with their own personalized ashtrays, kids frolic among swans, pedal boats, giant inflatable rafts. In the lounge chair in front of us, a mahogany bedpost in his 70s, silver-haired and deservedly paunchy, is snacking olives and spitting the stones straight into the sand. I've been itching for this discussion all week, waiting to examine new findings with one of the 3 investigators that's been studying this subject as long as I have. The other investigator couldn't make it to Italy due to bad timing and family obligations. So I turn to my sister and say, Dad was an alcoholic and Mom was clinically depressed. And then, because it lands with Tourette's starkness, I add shticky Jewish character voice, discuss. She says, well, he was compulsive, but he was compulsive about everything, exercising, cleaning, socializing, work. She says, alcoholism is something that has a clinical definition. She says, I should know, I'm a clinical psychologist. I say, he drank wine at night, every night. not just a little wine. He drank about a bottle, give or take a glass at minimum, and maybe 3 or 4 at the parties he constantly held. My brother-in-law says, he was at our house a few nights when we didn't have any alcohol. I say, yeah, and I bet he fucking hated it. It's not just my parents' individual behavior that needs to be questioned now in the light of their deaths. It's also their dynamic. And by dynamic, I mean the two of them, his and hers. Little knitted caps placed over rolls of toilet paper in their bathroom, a quaint 70s gift from the August they married. The his and hers toilet paper caps were probably hand knit by a hippie friend with a name like Mari or Donna or Judy. They were married during the time in Los Angeles's cultural evolution where Woody Allen was writing his best jokes about the place, and it was considered provocative to take your date to a screening of Deep Throat. Hippies were over and yuppies were coming. In between, there was a confusing amount of facial hair and polyester. When they married, he was 21 and she was 19. When they married, her father implied that my dad would be taking over payment for my mom's education should he see fit for it to continue. He passed the baton respectfully to his son-in-law, like it was a Torah. He really made the man and wife of I now pronounce you man and wife crackle. So they got married and lived in West LA and continued to go to school for anthropology and modern dance at first, and then for law and recreational therapy when reality forced its hand. I want to continue down this road with my parents. I really do, but the kids keep coming over and asking for things. My sister suggests we change our parents' names to Joe and Susan so that we can keep talking about them in between handing out turkey jerky, reapplying sunscreen, promising to go in the water soon. We'll be in soon. I say, think about it this way. If Susan was your friend, what would you say about her relationship with Joe? I'd say Joe's a narcissist and Susan is a doormat. She says, And in fact, she didn't have any friends, Susan, that is. He had all the friends. She was his plus one. She says, we were her friends. I say, we were her children. When my mom was depressed, she ate in her car, secret shameful things like McDonald's and malt balls. She also read romance novels, the cheap paperbacks you'd find in grocery stores, The Bodice Ripper, which always sounded like a rapey superhero to me, though it counts as a genre of literature. She read them and stored them under the bed. She read so many, the bed actually lifted off the ground, balanced on quivering members and pink petals of femininity instead of the floor. Her depression looked like a spaced out Stepford number. She moved through the world without really existing in it. She was quiet, spoke when spoken to, but then again, she was a mother of 3 and didn't have the luxury of being really depressed. I want to be like, damn girl, try it my way. 1 week on, 1 week off, but that week off, baby, I can disappear completely, become a ghost in my own home, only the smell of old cat litter and the occasional food in, food out to remind me I'm still here. When she wasn't depressed, she was dieting. I'm so LA, my mom and I did fen together. My mother was usually on a diet, which I guess means she wasn't usually depressed. We had thick issues of fashion magazines around, Vogue, Bazaar, 17, Allure, Domino. These were our gateway drugs. When my mother was on a tuna and grapefruit diet, I had the idea to cut out her head from old photos and place them on the bodies of models, which I then taped onto the fridge and snack cupboard. These Frankenstein creatures lived in our kitchen, the most social room, for over a year. The momidals were funny, and so they stayed in view. What did she think of these freakish amalgamations of her face attached to lithe, fashionable bodies? Did she think I was mocking her? Was I mocking her? I think I was truly interested in helping. Because I used photos that no one minded cutting up, her expressions were often grotesque, caught mid-blink or mouth open about to yell. They were better because of the wild expressions. They were campier. I think this was my way of showing my mother I loved her. Love for her was never something I felt sure of, both the giving or the receiving end. I felt sure she was trying to love me and that was excruciating for her a lot of the time. But there were languages we had in common. We both knew deeply what it felt like to fantasize about bodily perfection and obsessively mount campaigns to achieve it. We both knew how to shop and how to identify what looked good and bad on our bodies. We both spoke the language of dark surrender to forces that were no longer in our control. But everything outside that conjoined circle of our Venn diagram was fodder for fighting or something to tune out. It occurs to me that I'm wading into quicksand. I'm not clever enough, distant enough to avoid being sucked in. These are, after all, my parents. They mean something whether I want them to or not. I want them to mean what I want them to mean. I want the issues sorted. My instinct is to reveal the sludge that bound them together. The room I am decorating worked in my head, but now that the furniture is laid out, it's tricky. I selected 60s Danish teak, marble, brass, caramel leather Barcelona chairs, then realized the room I was decorating was the Oval Office. None of it will work. I'm mad at myself for making things weird at the lake. Why did I push for their marriage to be revealed as bad, for their habits to be revealed as clinical issues? I had to wrench myself out of the free fall. I had to drop the subject then, but I know I will come back to it. I've got a bone to pick with you, and I think you know it's true. When I re-enter the subject, I'm still ashamed of my behavior, of my Shiva the Destroyer act, but part of me needs to push, so I start by looking up definitions: functional alcoholic, drinking problem, alcoholism, and find that there are many, but they only differ in nuanced ways. Alcoholism is defined by alcohol dependence, which is the body's physical inability to stop drinking and the presence of alcohol cravings. Individuals with an alcohol addiction may go to extreme measures such as stealing, lying, hiding alcohol, drinking household cleaners that contain alcohol, and other unhealthy behaviors to obtain alcohol due to cravings and the fear of withdrawal. In the absence of alcohol, these individuals can experience alcohol withdrawals, which are characterized by agitation, tremors, hot flashes, increased heart rate and blood pressure, nausea and vomiting, and seizures. Withdrawing from alcohol can be lethal, and therefore individuals should seek professional help when trying to quit their drinking habit. Mea culpa, I misused the term alcoholic. Story over. No, but seriously, folks, there was something not kosher about my dad's drinking. There's something here, especially if I look at the behaviors that characterize alcohol abuse. Here, let me show you. Magical chime sound, and we all cinematically shift to the list portion of this essay. Always having to finish an alcoholic beverage or even another person's unfinished beverage. Hot train wine. It happened in between lands on a 5-hour train ride from Prague to Berlin. I had a baby they were meeting for the first time, my daughter. It was a momentous occasion which happened in deep winter. She was born in November, and I think they visited in February. We stayed in one of those grand hotels with its own Turkish sauna, tattered by years of neglect. I recall the darkness, the sense of potential during that time. It was a brief moment when I felt like my life was on track and fulfilling. Time in Prague is hazy in the way all time after the birth of a child is. I recall a few specifics. My mother wearing socks and suede loafers in a below freezing walking tour. I reacted furiously when I saw how uncomfortable she was and how hard she was trying to hide it. I brought her into a shoe store and forced her to buy real boots. It was the first time as a mother I felt I had failed as a mother. I recall the dark depths of garnet jewelry, the perfect color for Prague to be associated with. There was a museum cafe that my mom and I holed up in while Edgar and my dad continued the walking tour of the Jewish cemetery. Without a home to rest in, the cold drives you inside. Places like cafes become a temporary shelter. And while I don't have any specific memory of what happened in that cafe, it's the feeling of it being a home that I recall. My mom, my daughter, and I making ourselves comfortable, staring out of windows, talking lightly. But this story concerns the train and the wine on the train. The ride home was 5 hours long. It began in the early afternoon and continued till evening, maybe 3 to 8. The view, while there was enough light to have one, was immaculate snow on pine trees, an endless winter wonderland. The weather made us crave warmth and sustenance constantly. My dad asked me to go with him into the dining car. We went alone, leaving the baby with Edgar and my mom. This was our bonding time. This was our celebration of my adulthood, which unfortunately seemed to coincide with a gastronomical low point. The fact that trains have dining cars is sort of romantic and probably chic in the golden age of rail travel. But today the cart has the sweet and acidic smell of cheap beef stew. The menu is limited. They have beer and coffee. They have peanuts, candy bars, and industrial prepackaged sandwiches. They have twist-off bottles of red and white wine and unfested mini bottles of champagne. The champagne is probably for bachelorette weekends. My dad orders the stew, sparkling water, and 2 mini bottles of wine. I forget what I got, but I do remember him assuming I would drink the other wine. He says, "So what's new, BB? I've just had a baby, but that isn't news he can use." So I probably talked about work and that pantomime of adult conversation you have with parents in order to make everyone feel safe. "How's the wine, Dad?" I asked, smirking. "It's not bad, it's not bad." He doesn't make eye contact when he eats, my dad. He is still very much a shtetl Jew in that way. Or maybe I make him uncomfortable with my life in a foreign country and my German baby daddy who looks like Dolph Lundgren. Maybe that's why he isn't looking at me. I persist about the wine. I say, "No, it's not good. It's wine that lives on a train. It's been under fluorescent lights for God knows how long. It's cheap red swill that..." I examine the bottle more closely, holding it in my hands like a disdainful sommelier. "Claims to be from France, but it's probably from Moldova." I take the vessel the wine is being held in, plastic in the shape of a wine glass. I take a sip and stick out my tongue like a rueful toddler. "This is undrinkable," I declare, defying my dad to take another sip. But he does. Of course he does. He finishes his bottle and he finishes mine. Having thrown up a wall vis-a-vis the wine declaration, I find it hard to be pleasant the rest of the time. I sit across from him and we make conversation, but I retain an edge of defiance. During this trip, my dad was the only drinker. Edgar is a recovering alcoholic. My mom can take it or leave it. And my best supporting actress role was on hold because I was a fresh nursing mother. I could not accept his gratitude in the form of alcohol, though he bought plenty. At the local discount grocery store, he bought the most expensive bottles he could find. At restaurants, he ordered and drank most of 2 bottles, white for me, red for him. But there weren't many occasions like that over the week. They stayed in our apartment, not a hotel. We ate the Turkish food our neighborhood is famous for. We went places where beer was the only option. My dad never drinks beer, only wine. The wine on the train doesn't seem like much now that I'm searching it for meaning. There's a lot of ways to explain it without it seeming like a red flag. He wanted to celebrate with me, and that's the only thing they had, so what the hell? He really didn't know it would be terrible. It's Europe, after all, and Europeans are sophisticated, ergo even their train wine will be good. He bought it, so he drank it. Any other decision would be a waste of money. He ordered it as a reflex. Dinner goes with alcohol, and this was dinner. Is it really so weird to continue that tradition on a train? It might even be cute, what with the individual serving size and scuffed white plastic plates on blue trays. Sort of a when in Prague story to tell when he gets back. But my memory is tinged with desperation. That's the only word for it. I was watching a man who needed to drink hot train wine. I don't know how I knew that. I just knew. Drinking daily. It's harder to recall the days he didn't drink. I can't see them. I can only see his high-stemmed goblet on the table every night, the cascading glugs of the first garnet liquid pour. First sip always followed by a sound that suggested a deep thirst being quenched. I see endless parties with endless bottles being opened and poured and somehow finished by the end of the night with no trace left by morning. Cleaning up was important to my dad, cleaning it all up so the house was reset to its factory default state. The state was something the rest of us struggled to see, but he would point it out to us, crouching to pick up food off the floor, releasing an audible kvetch as he bent down. He was strong, but never flexible. The towels in the bathroom reminded me of a sitcom with a rich and exhausting cast of characters. The bath towels hung in pairs, neatly spaced across a brass bar, their younger siblings. The hand towels no one was allowed to use hung above them, neatly spaced so that they hit the exact center. The hand towel we could use was hanging from a ring, and this one could be himself, slightly askew and off kilter, a little bit wet in spots, a little bit stained and compromised. This towel took on sculptural significance in a world of obedient pastel rectangles. What I'm saying is that there was a right way to do things, and he could see when it needed to be done. Not just that, he was deeply annoyed that we were so unhelpful. There were rituals that played out daily in precise order. He came into the kitchen while we were in the den watching TV. We could see his car pull up from that room. We watched him walk past the stained glass window with the orange flowers, watched him as he reached the door, heard the same papery swish of his entrance, stack of mail in hand, the plop of his keys, the garbled hello to us girls, his girls, draped across the forest green leather couches, none of us looking up or popping over to give a proper greeting. The first prayer begins. Whose shoes are these? Are these your shoes? Hello, somebody answer me. But none of us answer. We never do. He always persists. He is staring at a pile of shoes on the step that separates the den from the kitchen. This room used to be the garage and was converted to a family room. The step is beige carpet. It is where we kick our shoes off before plopping onto the forest green couches with our snacks, one after the other, like synchronized swimmers performing a lazy ballet. Whose shoes are these? In 1996, these would have been white Converse low tops, J.Crew platform flip-flops that looked like thick coral tongues, soft, buttery mountains of Uggs. They were our shoes. I mean, like, duh, why even ask? I'm gonna throw these fucking shoes away if you don't put them in your rooms in 5 seconds. I'm serious. The prayer ends when he squeals, God damn it. Or we squeal, okay, we'll do it. And one of us, probably me, emerges from the forest green leather couch, tisking and scowling, hunches down, scoops up the pile of shoes, stomps to the back of the house and dumps them at the foot of the stairs leading to our bedrooms. The second prayer continues in a silent progression of my father's movements, thudding upstairs, whir of electric toothbrush barely audible above the TV, thudding back downstairs, hefting the gym bag onto the counter, grabbing his keys, a distracted bye, answered by a robotic chorus of bye in unison, slamming of the door. The final prayer happens an hour later when he's back from the gym, sweaty with victory, sweaty with the accomplishment of discipline, a sweaty crown he doesn't remove or shower off, but takes straight to the wine cabinet where he selects a bottle lovingly and opens it and drinks. It ends when he makes the thirst-quenching sound, finally at ease. Having chronic blackouts, memory lapse due to excessive drinking. So, 3 Jews head to German wine country, Papa Jew, Mama Jew, and Baby Jew. Baby Jew is a decade past drinking age and living in Berlin. Mama and Papa Jew are not thrilled by this decision. Still, everyone tries to enjoy the sloping hills around the Mosel River, ooh and ah at the majestic castles, sample the region's famous smoked pork products. The 3 Jews stay in an honest-to-God castle, decorated in the 80s and not updated since then. The effect is like if Family Ties took place in a castle, a lot of plaid. The Jews arrived day drunk and were shown to the room the 3 of them would share for the night. 3 little Jews in their stone turret, freshening up before dinner. The bathroom was open to the bedroom, except for the toilet, that was private, but the bathroom sink and the massive stone shower were open in a sexy cosplay way. I guess there was a lot of fair maiden, powerful prince shit going on there. Lucky for the 3 Jews, we had never been a modest household. Everyone in my family has seen everyone else in my family shit multiple times. My sister used to prefer having company. She asked for entertainment and I obliged. Shower curtains, please. The show is about to begin. I told a few jokes, sang a little Les Mis, an impromptu showcase. So I wasn't fazed by my parents' nudity, had spent a lifetime not looking directly at my father's dick while admiring in a proprietary way the strength of his back and shoulders. He was objectively the best looking dad in Van Nuys. I cherish this memory. My mom and dad, naked side by side at the bathroom sink while I shower beside them, the 3 of us chatting the whole time about plans for tomorrow shampoo quality, outfits. At the castle, dinner is served at 7. It was one of those places, very formal without actually being fancy. We sat and ate in a room full of old Germans. It was uncomfortable. My poor mom, the child of survivors, trying not to show fear or disgust for my sake, because I would have jumped down her throat if she'd said anything. I would have pounced and defended Germans just to hold the enlightened position. Now I can admit my own ambivalence about living in a country that is famous for schnitzel and Nazis. But then I was all spit and shoe polish. We all got drunk, so I don't remember the meal except that I found it disappointing. My mom and I could not drink to keep up with my dad, so he soldiered on without us. I think we ended with ice vine, exquisitely sweet and flavorful because the sugar in the late harvested grapes are halfway to being raisins by the time they're picked. The 3 pickled Jews go back to their room and flop onto their beds. Sometime in the middle of the night, baby Jew is awoken by the sound of Papa and Mama Jew in the shower. Papa Jew is sick. He's saying, oi, 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 oi. And Mama Jew is trying to help him get it all out and then rinse him down. Baby Jew has never witnessed Papa so drunk before. She pretends to be asleep, knows that this is not her domain, but still she's frightened. In the morning, she comes down to breakfast and sees Mama and Papa eating fruit and bacon. Papa Jew looks better. She asks him to be sure. Are you feeling better, Papa? Last night sounded rough. He answers, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel fine. Pass the bacon. I feel like maybe I should pause. Like, is this going on too long?
Finish it. No, it's great. Finish it.
All right, okay, all right. Feeling guilt and shame about their drunken behaviors. My parents were forced to visit Germany because I lived there. They always hated Berlin, and due to some combination of shit luck and Murphy's Law, I always took them places where the service was exquisitely terrible, the ground was covered in rats or dog shit, and the goods for purchase were not to their liking. KaDeWe was an exception. The best floor at KaDeWe is the food floor. It's very labyrinth, very mirrored and vast. As you walk, there are lots of little alleyways presenting different stations for food making or food purveying. The amount of stuff and people and smells is dizzying, a pandemic petri dish. The stand my dad liked was the oyster stand, and I liked it too. It's a little oasis of white tile, bright light, and minimal furnishings in a chaotic sea of style and taste. I love oysters. No one had to convince me of their worth. I got it immediately. It's like feasting on briny aliens. I love the sauces too, the horseradish or the shallot and lemon one. We would go to KaDeWe to eat oysters and drink champagne. The place was mad and bustling, and we felt like royalty up there, yelling our conversation to each other, getting drunk enough that I banged my tooth on the rim of the champagne glass, but the champagne and oysters kept coming. There was a balls to the wall decadence to the experience. Sip and slurp, laugh till you almost piss yourself. When we were good in sauce, we would wander around the 6th level luxury department store, high enough to spend a lot of money. My dad bought an espresso machine there one time. I was already carrying about 10 shopping bags filled with coffee, tea, challah, bed linens, limited edition Adidas, Jo Malone perfume, and foundation. We stumbled literally onto the houseware section where my dad saw a Ferrari red Nespresso machine. Convinced they were giving it away for that price, he tried his charm out on a female store clerk with no English skills. At KaDeWe, they didn't waste English-speaking employees in the houseware section, but my dad persisted and implored me to use my pidgin German to woo her, a real Cyrano de Bergerac shtick for the two of us to play out. But I struck out. I couldn't understand her and she couldn't understand me. My dad sought my assurance that he was making the right decision, but it was more like his job was to convince both of us that he was. He's a really good salesman. He once sold insurance to a devout Christian who, upon his showing up for the appointment, informed him that Jesus had spoken to her and told her not to go through with it. My dad said, well, that's crazy because I also spoke to the Lord and he told me to make sure you did go through with it. She fucking bought the insurance, finger guns, finger guns, finger guns, poo, poo, poo. So yeah, he convinced himself to buy the Nespresso maker. It was red. It required its own suitcase to get back to the US of A. And once he got it there, it needed an adapter the same size as the fucking coffee machine. Every time I saw the full apparatus on the counter, 2 machines side by side, about the size of a respectable fish aquarium, with the sole purpose of making a cup of coffee, I felt like I had made the same mistake too. Engaging in risky sexual behavior when intoxicated. Jesus Christ, I fucking hope not. Gross. Driving drunk. He would make it seem like he was doing you a favor. Of course, he was the one that ordered the 3rd or 4th or 5th bottle that no one wanted. But now it was on the table and someone had to finish it. Dead soldiers. That's what you call the bottle when it's empty. A battle metaphor. The battle was to appear sober enough to drive home. I can hear his defensive falsetto. I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Sometimes he would joke that it's safer with him drunk than with mommy sober. But ching, it never occurred to me then that he was very drunk most nights we went out to eat. Drunk driver, driving drunk with his wife and kids. Surrounding themselves socially with heavy drinkers. The Van Nuys gym crew was legendary. Meltzer, world-class mullet, homuncular strength, spent life in gaping bum tank tops and loose mesh shorts. Leather Joe, so named because he was tan as fuck. Joe was a bouncer that definitely knew his way around a steroid and once ran over his girlfriend Tracy with his car on purpose. Danny, who no one liked. Robbie, who was closeted and wore a singlet when he worked out, sold candles. Doc, AKA the dentist. He had a satin bomber jacket and the other guys would sing Doc in white satin to tease him. Seth, with the hot racist South African wife who made hideous jewelry. This crew ruled the valley from the Spearmint Rhino to the Sagebrush Cantina. We used to roll 15, 16 deep into the Outtake Cafe. Friday night special, dinner and a movie. I was 15 and had a boyfriend, Julian, a sweet boy with no bone to pick. We would go out with the crew too, because what could we plan that would be better? This way we got free dinner. Julian was partial to the duck, a few glasses of wine, and a free movie. There was no awkward attention paid to us. We were just another couple out on the town. The fact that they were my parents and their friends seemed incidental. That was Friday. Sunday, they all came back. Early mornings, sitting around our kitchen table while my mom made fruit salad, French toast, pancakes, 7 dwarves in worn down gym clothes, except for Robbie, who looked like an Alvin Ailey dancer. We were not intimidated by the sudden burst of testosterone in our 4-on-1 estrogen zone. I stared down Leather Joe. I stared at him silently, still in my pajamas, sleep-crusted eyes, until he said, "Sorry, dear," and gave me my seat back, my rightful place as the eldest daughter in the house they all worshipped. Back then, my dad was really enjoying a moment of raucous masculine camaraderie. There were Hell's Angels, Russian gangsters, C-list celebs, ex-military, a motley assortment that wandered in and out of our backyard during legendary barbecues. Daddy had these ridiculous charms that guests were supposed to put on their wine glasses so they could identify their glass after it was set down. No one ever remembered, though. They were all too drunk. Sometimes Daddy would get so drunk, he let himself get emotional in a Russian patriarch sort of way. He called me over and asked me to sing for everyone. "Bibi, sing something. I'll give you $20. A court-like atmosphere requires entertainment. A young maiden, recently deflowered but still blushing in her youth, sings Rhiannon to the crowd of rabble-rousers. Plates piled high with T-bones, sausage casing, hunks of discarded chicken, slippery brown with barbecue sauce, while Daddy looks on, proudly territorial. At the end, they'd raise their glasses and those little wine charms would clink and tingle in approval. An increasing sense of denial their heavy drinking is a problem because they can succeed professionally and personally. For starters, Daddy drank expensive red wine. He was not slurping Mad Dog or crushing cans of beer on his forehead while he watched NASCAR. It was a respectable man's poison, very popular in LA at the time, very normalized to have wine with dinner, like the Europeans. We went to wineries all the time, drove up to Napa with the rolling hills and fields of lavender, row upon row of grapes pruned to bonsai precision by Mexicans. At the end of each row, there was always a rose bush for some reason, not a terroir reason, something else I can't remember. In these settings, the alcohol is given at the end of the tour, a tasting where you swish, swish, spit, spit across 8 or so bottles. Daddy's palate for all his drinking never made it past adolescence. He knew it, and he was impressed by anyone who could decipher the code of smells and flavors behind the wine. We're more inclined to refer to a man who drinks copious amounts of wine as a bon vivant than a drunk. The fact that he could afford it, stock it, pour it for guests, speak intelligently about the premium selection at Costco, all of that artifice put his drinking high up on a shelf beyond reproach. But when his professional life was unstable, when he was going through bankruptcy after a failed venture, he found a way to keep the wine flowing, and it was not above board. Someone at the gym knew some mafia guys that used to knock bottles off Ralph's grocery trucks. Daddy, with his vast network of fancy wine addicts, was the perfect middleman for the distribution. He would look at a list of what was on the truck, tell the gangsters what to lose, and then talk it up to his friends, selling the danger and intrigue, of course, but mostly selling the once-in-a-lifetime reduced price. Get it while it's hot, boys. Get it while the getting's good. Tignanello, Super Tuscan. Yes, I mean champagne, not sparkling wine. Like I said, he was an excellent salesman. Not being able to imagine their life without alcohol. This one seems unfair. I can't imagine my life without alcohol. I mean, I can actually imagine it, but it looks pretty fucking brutal to me. A life of missing out on something I love in so many forms, the spiked smoke of whiskey, the deep, pleasant burn, those fat red wines from Provence that taste a little like blood and raspberries, the herbal froth of IPAs. I used to be a wine critic. I think I did it for my dad. I think I was always looking for a way to make the things he loved most my whole life. I wanted to show him that I was clever enough to make that work. With the master's in gastronomy, the insipid privilege inherent in that degree, yeesh. He would summon me for our nightly performance. He poured and the day slowed down, distilled to the bottle and the glasses and the liquid within both. We sipped and he'd ask me, so what do you think, BB? And I guessed the varietal, which was easy because he only drank Cabs, Pinots, and occasionally Malbec or Syrah, but it was always a heavy red. So I'd say, it's vegetal and a little hint of chocolate mint. This is a big boy, lots of sun, lots of alcohol, not a Pinot. I think it's a Cab from Santa Barbara. And he'd say, on the money, honey, in an exaggerated radio DJ voice. L'chaim, drink. Who can imagine their life without alcohol? Who except someone who has been forced to? And even if you're forced to, it's not like that's a smooth transition. Why the fuck do you think there's AA? It's insanely hard. It requires constant support. Relapse is the rule, not the exception. It would have to be a disease before I'd quit, and I won't go down without a fight. As for Daddy, he stopped drinking when he stopped eating, when he flipped to the morphine drip and made peace with his life draining out of him. I wonder about his last bottle and whether he knew it was his last. He had nothing saved for such an occasion, I'm sure of that. He drank it as soon as it came into his possession. But maybe he was clear that things were going downhill fast, and he bought all his old favorites, clasped them to his chest with the joy of a man rediscovering his most enduring love. Drinking problem. Having a drinking problem is different from having an alcohol addiction due to one main delineating factor, the ability to take a step back and quit. According to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse, excessive drinking is categorized by heavy drinking, binge drinking, underage consumption, and women who drink during pregnancy. By gender, heavy drinking for men is defined as more than 5 drinks in one sitting and more than 15 drinks per week. For women, it is 4 drinks in one sitting and more than 8 drinks in 1 week. This seems sexist. These individuals may be classed as almost alcoholic. They are still able to take a step back and assess their situation and make proper adjustments. There you have it. Daddy was almost an alcoholic. All right.
That was fantastic, Sabrina. I love how this piece evolves as it goes. It's remarkable because it starts off, I don't want to say light, but it starts off very snarky, very funny, and there's so much focus on the banality of conversation and stuff, and you think you know what this piece is going to be, and that piece would still have been great, but what it becomes is even better, because as it goes along, it gets deeper and darker and more interested in, first of all, like seriously exploring the question of whether the father was an alcoholic or not, but also increasingly is viewing that as a lens for, like, the question of alcoholism is almost irrelevant at the end, because it just becomes a lens to like better understand this lost parent, and then ultimately as a lens for the narrator to better understand themselves, right? And the way it evolves, like psychologically, the way it fucking almost deceives the reader in terms of like lulling them in, like, and adjusting their expectations just a little until you're you go from a place that seems like banal to a place of real, like, deep emotional poignancy. It's a good fucking piece is what I'm saying, and thank you for reading it.
Thanks for putting up with 13 pages, guys.
No, it's good. One cool thing about this reading series is, because it's, we generally go for a couple hours, we can have a good mix of like longer pieces and short pieces. Like, I know Gigi's going to read a poem at the end that will probably, I haven't looked at it yet, but it's probably going to be like 6 lines long and like less than a minute, right? So it's, I don't know, I love that dynamic. It's not like, okay, 5 minutes and you're done.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sabrina, that was fantastic.
No, I really, it was definitely worth getting up early for, because I love hearing what you have to say about it. It's really neat to be on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, thank you. It was a fantastic piece. Blick is up next, but Blick, are you still with us, Blick, or is Blick, did he log off at one point? If not, we can skip him and circle back. I think he's gone. So, Josh.
I'm here. Is it me?
Yes, it's you, Josh.
Sorry, I just got a phone call and then stepped aside. I'm gonna.
No, it's okay.
1 second here. So I have a Google Doc with the things, because I think William had said you like to read along with things. I think. And was sorry to miss the end of Sabrina's story, so because I was enjoying that. So I'll just read the expat version, even though I got my first expat rejection 3 for 4 yesterday.
What?
But it was fine because it was a story that Terror House published in a better version, and I just forgot that I sent to them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right, so these are 2 poems that I wrote on the way to New York, and then I want to do here a serialized kind of novella that I'm not really, I don't know, I don't think I'm not paying attention to sentences as much. It's more of a travelogue for me, but I kind of thought it would kind of push me to write it if I come here and most weeks read a couple chapters. They're quite short. So I'll read the first 2 poems and they're all in one link, so I'm just sending it here. Hold on, I think I have to make it public.
Yeah, it's telling me I need access, so.
All right, try again.
Beautiful.
All right. So, on a megabus traveling 85 miles per hour somewhere near Watertown, it's the before the accident that scares me most because there's always a before the accident, even if there's no accident. Question: what is cyber writing? Answer: cyber writing is the moment before you hit the brakes, but after your brain has already identified the threat. It is a screaming butterfly, a great towering wave of molasses, a splash pad, but instead of sprinklers, there are just a bunch of blow dryers set to cool. It is politely asking someone if you can please use the shitter. Cyber writing is the year 1959 and Helen Keller's moist hands on your face. It's a gentle breeze in an active volcano, an eel in a snake pit, a snail on a trampoline. It is a tide that never returns. Basically, cyber writing is what Anne Frank would have looked like if she ever turned legal age, okay? And then this is the the kind of novella. I don't know. It's chaptered. They're short. And it's called I'm Driving 10 Hours and Crossing an International Border to Read My Fiction in Front of Maybe a Dozen People for 6 minutes. Chapter 1, Megabus. I'm driving 10 hours and crossing an international border to read my fiction in front of maybe a dozen people for 6 minutes. A depressing thought at the best of times, but it's core-shattering as this megabus driver totally sends it. It's Saturday night, and we're taking a discount red-eye trip between Toronto and New York. Sheila's using the Waze app to track the bus's speed. She tells me the driver's hitting 140 kilometers an hour at points. That soon becomes close to 90 miles per hour as we pass through Niagara Falls. This is a hostage situation. Several times during the ride, I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Death by megabus, how very on brand. I begin wondering what people will post to Twitter in the aftermath. They did, redacted, so dirty at her online memorial after her death by showing an old picture of her where she has cornrows in her hair. What horrifying vestigial images of Josh Sherman are out there. For a second, the idea that I'm gonna go out trying to do what I love more than anything, literature, and with someone I love more than anyone, Sheila, consoles me. Then it hits me again, 6 minutes. Other intrusive thoughts are joining my anxiety and disappointment, like a neurotic group chat. This time, it's an irrational fear that I'm going to swallow my own tongue on purpose. I'm intently focusing on not swallowing my own tongue. I'm still intently focusing on not swallowing my own tongue. It's ruining the high point of the trip so far. A stop at a 24-hour Burger King. I can't touch my fully loaded croissant, a 1,002 calorie breakfast sandwich on a croissant with egg, bacon, sausage, and ham stuffed between. There's a whole fucking zoo on this thing, I tell Sheila, who seems to be handling the situation a little better than me. I'm flicking my tongue against my front teeth, keeping it as far away from my throat as possible. Before every turn, the megabus driver switches on the high beams. I assume he just wants to confirm that he can, in fact, gun it this fast around the bend. The high beams flick on again, and I can't believe the bus doesn't roll. This must be what zero gravity is like. Afterwards, nobody says anything, but passengers who were asleep are no longer dreaming. There's a tense hush among us. More than the jarring motion itself, I suspect it's an evolutionary trait to subconsciously sense danger. To be sure, an innate will to survive isn't what has me clutching the armrest with slippery palms. It's a need for some control over the terms of my expiration, which I think I read somewhere, but is no less true for me. It's why I don't fly. I long ago decided that dying in a plane crash is an easily avoidable situation, since one seldom must fly, and therefore is a stupid and embarrassing way to die. Obviously, I hadn't considered my current ordeal, but my perspective is changing. If anything, I should have been flying as much as I could. Famous people die in plane crashes. Name me a single icon killed by a megabus. I start rating hypothetical deaths. Death by megabus is only slightly more dignified than how Frank O'Hara went. Someone ran the poet over with a dune buggy while he was strolling the beach on Fire Island. On the other hand, I'm sure they let Frank O'Hara read for more than 6 minutes when he was alive. So that was chapter 1. And then the second chapter is Hot Rat in the City. Manhattan, 11 a.m. The megabus drops us off at 34th Street between 11th and 12th Avenues. The megabus website says the spot is right across from something called the Javits Theater Center, rather. I do not know what the Javits Center is. Lots more people here than in Toronto, but my city has buildings just as tall, shadows as imposing, traffic almost as bad. I think that's why Manhattan didn't make an immediate impression when I was here with my mom in 2010. It's just more of what's already a maximalist thing to begin with. We're going to ride the subway to Brooklyn, a place I haven't been before. That's where the reading is tomorrow, the one where the event organizer, Michael McSweeney, has slotted me in for a 6-minute marathon. And so Sheila booked an Airbnb somewhat nearby. We're waiting for the Airbnb host to message when the other guest has left and the place is ready for us. So I order another fully loaded croissant witch from a subterranean Burger King. My mind/tongue cooperates, and I know what I'll be eating for breakfast every day I'm here. I'd eat Pizza Hut in Italy if they'd let me. What I don't know is which train we're taking to get to Brooklyn. Sheila coordinates everything. We're getting off at Marcy, she says. This is after I ask her about the master plan once more. We walk past the public art thing in Hudson Yards that people keep using for suicide, and Sheila reaches for her phone. Dorian, the Airbnb host, has messaged to say we can head over now. We emerge from Marcy Avenue Station in a womb of humidity. The air is so thick, I remember summer afternoons spent trying to walk underwater in the pool. It's early afternoon and like 30 degrees Celsius. Taking the steps down from the station to South 6th Street, I've never encountered such ambiguous but sweet-smelling garbage. I suspect it is sweet-smelling because of its ambiguity. I can't mentally place it as something gross. I don't have the context. Within 5 minutes, I decide the near-death experience on Megabus was worth it. I know I'm going to like it here, and I don't care how embarrassing my cliched and immediate affection for Brooklyn will be when these thoughts become the words of a serialized novella that I recite aloud at Misery Tourism, a weekly reading group for transgressive authors, and the way I met 6-Minute McSweeney in the first place. No, I don't care because I know what I like and dislike almost instantly, almost always. Rarely do I change my mind. Case in point, I met Sheila years before we started dating. She was my best friend's girlfriend. I tried to fuck her then, and I try, with more success, to fuck her now. We walk past the abstract remains of a rat smeared on the sidewalk. He's in his post-rat phase, I say to Sheila, looking back at what really resembles a gigantic piece of gum rubbed into the carpet of a grade school years ago. The song Hot Child in the City blares from some restaurant, and I sing along to the melody, Hot Rat in the City. Then I tell Sheila, I actually like them, you know? Who? Sheila asks. Nick Glider? I have no idea who Nick Glider is. Babe, he's the one who wrote the song. Oh no, not that guy. The Rats. I really like the Rats. This is Hot Rat Summer, and I'm here for it. I'm not joking as I say this to her. They're tenacious, the Rats. It's admirable. I respect their invasiveness, how they've carved out a place for themselves and won't let go, even though everyone's like, leave? In fact, by all accounts, it seems like they're winning. Well, in general, as a species, not the rat smear we've just stepped over. Someone opens a metal hatch leading to the basement of a restaurant we pass. They begin receiving a load of produce from a truck. We do not have these metal hatches in Toronto. Sheila warns me, those are all over the place here, and to watch out for them when I'm inevitably staggering around drunk later tonight. She's not being snarky. The last time her band was on tour, it almost happened to her bassist. We're also going to a disco party tonight, and that means I'll be consuming 10 to 14 Palomas. We turn to walk under the Brooklyn Bridge, I think. It could be the Williamsburg Bridge. It is old and iron. I'm not a metalsmith. I don't know. A subway thunders overhead, and it sounds like a mistake. Apparently, we're close now. We're staying by South 5th Street and Wyeth Avenue. Sheila showed me photos when she was booking the place, but I only pretended to look. I have trouble rallying the smallest amount of energy over something I don't care completely about at any given moment. I'm sure the place is fine, and if it's not, I can always complain. We're here, Sheila says. And then chapter 3 will be Dorian, where we meet the Airbnb host. And yeah.
Josh. Obviously I love this. I love what you're doing here. I love how like tremendously meta it is. How you even have the the moment where you're writing with self-consciously aware that this is going to become something that you will read on Misery Loves Company. But I have to say, Josh, I had the same fucking experience on a bus. It wasn't technically a mega bus. It was one of those Chinatown buses. I took it from when I was in grad school at Penn State. I took it from there to New York City to meet a friend who was going. It's a long story. Who was going to take me part of the way to meet some family to go home. It was like one of those things. I was going home for Thanksgiving and I wanted to meet a friend on the way up. And anyway, I took this Chinatown bus, and my God, not only was it going like 90 fucking miles an hour in pitch black in the middle of the night, at midnight, but the whole thing was vibrating. We went up like a hillside and I could feel it. I put my hand against the metal side of the bus, and it was it was.
Oh, I didn't even think. I'm glad I didn't
Oh
do
my
that.
God.
The whole time I was just like, this is America. Where are all your police I read so much about? Like, what the fuck is going on? And then just the last thing is, like, on the way back, we had two drivers. There were two drivers on both, but on the but on the way back there were two drivers, and the first guy was just as fast. On the way, when they switched, they're still both on the bus. And the second guy is tailgating like cars by like a meter because he was trying to get them to clear out of the way. We did get to a point when cars were just fucking, you know, he was like parting the waters like Moses, but it was like, it was crazy. And the funniest thing was then, as I'm getting off, we're on the highway. This is the last stretch in Toronto. We're on the highway. It's rush hour traffic this morning, and he's still doing the tailgating stuff. But it's start and stop. We're in start and stop traffic, and he goes from 0 to 90 just to stop again. At one point, the bathroom door in the back opens up, and because of the braking, and the driver asks the other driver to go close it, and he's like, "You don't know what you're doing. You're driving insanely. You go fucking close it." So the driver pulls the bus over on the highway, goes back, slams the door shut, comes up, continues his whole insane thing. He gets off the bus immediately after we stop, and I hear this driver who wasn't driving at that point being like, "I don't know what's wrong with that guy. I trained him like 10 years ago. Like, he's just trying to explain that, like, yeah, that guy is like insane." And
nuts. Oh my God. Well, that, I assume that's a later chapter of the novella, right?
That's going to be a postscript, because I have an ending in mind. It's almost too good to. I will say it because it is cliche, but it did happen.
Wait. Hold on. You're going to read the rest?
Yeah. I'll wait. It was something.
Don't spoil your own work, man.
And the last thing I'll say is, yeah, the meta thing at first, it felt like whatever, but actually Misery Tourism ties so much into the whole night, because that is how I met McSweeney. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not just, okay, it would have been a cute little line there, but anyways, but yeah, thanks for the kind words, and just had to tell the postscript bus story, because it's just, your experience, it's fucking insane. And
it's wild. Yeah.
If I can book seats, I'll book for the back. If I'm at the back, it seems better. If I can't see what's going on.
I have had so many bad experiences in buses because I don't drive. And so, and I'm poor, right? When you don't drive and you're poor and you want to go outside of your hometown or whatever, the Greyhound or Megabus or Chinatown bus becomes the default option. And I would say it's worse than a coin flip, whether you're going to have a terrible experience or a passable experience. There's no good experience on a Greyhound bus, but yeah. I mean, one time we were on I was on a Megabus with my sisters. We were going from Boston to DC, I think. And the fucking Megabus ran out of gas in Baltimore.
Ours got lost.
Ran out of fucking gas.
Ours had to turn around, and the whole time I was just thinking it was slowly turning around on a 2-lane highway, and we were at one point like just fully horizontal. And I always make jokes about the Canadian hockey team that got killed, the Humboldt Broncos, by like a truck at an intersection. I'm like, "Oh, Sheila, Humboldt, we're gonna Humboldt right now." But it was, I can't, I don't know. Maybe I will just like fly for reasons I just outlined in this thing. It's deeply unsettling. I don't remember. Maybe I got lucky the one time I did with my mom, and then just, but.
Hey, it's a gamble though, because you get a great story out of it every time. And as someone who mostly writes autofiction, man, you're guaranteed it's pay. Well,
I gotta live.
I mean, that's the gamble, right?
And you mentioned is the border, not the border, that it's poor people, and that is so clear, because on that going into the American border, you're viewed with such like skepticism as a person who willingly chooses to go on a bus. Like maybe that's where all the police were at the border, at the American side of the border, because it was really, you're getting grilled. When we came back, they literally just said, "Oh yeah, we're not checking anything. We're not checking any bags. Just go on."
Yeah. Well, the other thing, Josh, is this is particularly true the route that you were taking, and I've gone a number of times from upstate New York, just like you, down to the city or down. I had a friend in Massachusetts who I would go take the bus to visit quite often. And one thing, you probably know this about New York State, but in New York State, all of our prisons are upstate, pretty much.
Oh,
So
okay.
what happens is you'll have, if somebody has just gotten out of prison upstate and they need to get back to the city, you know, they don't fly them down, right? Like you get money for bus fare. So something like, at least on the Greyhound buses I took, probably something like 20% of the passengers were people who had just gotten out and traveling home.
That explains why we had to stop. They get that, which is what he got lost for. We had to stop at like a gas station. It was like a random, and like 2 people got on. And I mean, I actually feel safer with felons than with border cops. So, you know, whatever. But yeah. Anyway,
Josh,
thanks for hearing it out.
No, thank you. I hope you read more of this shit next time.
Sure, plan is to. Yeah.
I mean, it's great because like, not only is this, I always love your autofiction stuff because it's so funny, but finally, like, it's a world that I know too. So that just makes it extra, like, I don't know, extra gossipy and fun.
Sure. I thought it might be just as a Canadian seeing that, yeah. Canadian perspective. And then someone who doesn't travel as well. So
thank you, Josh. David's up next.
Hi, man.
Hey. So our second expat piece of the night.
Yeah. So I thought I probably should read from my actual book that I've had out for about a year, and I've never read anything from it. So I thought I'd give that a go. So the premise of the book is basically I wrote it just after, we decided to have Brexit, which, you know, is going fantastically. So it was kind of just a little, basically a guy who has no money, has to sell his body for medical experience. So this is like from the last part. It's like a narrative poem, I guess. So it's called Dr. Lazarus. So part 4. Here I am, my mother gone, my father gone, no one left to regard my faults with a kind eye. They are free from time, whereas I am its slave, its concubine of damnable lusts. Look at me, all Shakespeare. I'm Hamlet with no father to revenge, just a foolish knave caught in the mire of indecision, knowing not what is true and what is false. I've constructed myself into this stupid wretch, this howling idiot with teenage pretension and angst that I'm bored of. Here is my debased prayer that has sat in the heart of me since my father's death. Here is every pathetic utterance that has been shrouded by my most deceitful tongue, which cloaks my true self from my mother's shame. 2. My grotesqueness knows no bounds. I'm scared of the road ahead of me, terrified by the thought, the decision that accompanies each step. Every kernel of my mother's hope has been lost to the 4 winds that dictate the comings and goings of each slug-like soul. I chart my history along the lines of slime. Back to my accidental conception, where chance assaulted my mother's dreams and stitched my flesh to the cross of her threadbare desires. This madness started with my father's death, 52 with a ruddy complexion, the one that accompanies your face after siesta taken on the couch. I try to bridge the phantom depths between my father's image and me, on the wrong side of 30, drunk on my own futility. No, his death created a chasm between what I was and now am. The boy and the man, the dreamer and the dreary realist, read cynic, I now am. Cast your smiling hooks, Father, into my eyes, and let me see you. Let me hear that broken staccato voice that drove dogs to suicide. Let me hear your careful stumbled words as you told me of my mother's death. Melodrama befits only fools, but here, look at it, take it. Here is a son's plea to a mute father, but not told using the lexis of monotony, of contrived structure with the prosody of the glutter's sludge, sought beyond the surface self of quirky characters and limp, pleasant prose. To the sickly, rose-colored heart in clear-cut sentences that fail to give order to nature's chaos. Here is a fool's monologue. Shit on it, if you please. 3. Let's have one last look at you and take one more skin sample. Sorry about the pinch. He wheeled round on his chair, put my skin into a test tube and wheeled back around. He looked like he had been drunk the night before. Your skin looks marvelous. Took 5 years off you at least. It looks like you have a future. I didn't speak and simply held his gaze to try and communicate the measure of myself, my true depths untouched by him and his cream, the corruption and degradation of every day, of every little defeat which must be borne until you step clean through the darkness weightless into the cemetery of your forefathers. Very good. Now mum's the word, you understand. All that's passed here is confidential. If you speak, the prison bars will be the only things that hold you for a long time. No money, no freedom. I nod. The words do not obey my commands. They disintegrate into the formless dark mass of my mind. Prison holds little fear for me. In many ways, it would be an upgrade. Take this as my one-fingered salute, you bureaucratic circle jerks. The women at the front desk will give you your payment. You have been good here, adhered as you should to proper authority. If any of more trials come up, we have your contact details. Goodbye. He stood up as if someone had inserted a cattle prod up his anus. Goodbye. And here I am on the threshold of another uncertain future. I pick up my duffel bag, which is the only home I know, and step out of the previously locked examination room to my cash, my store-owned baked beans and Aldi gin, and my hostel room for a tenner a night. Well, that's it. That will be the luxury before I try and find an honest job again, working in some pound shop with 16-year-olds who know each pore of skin more than the continents that shape our world. Get off your high horse, old man. Your generation is as vacuous as the next. We just couldn't broadcast our neurosis at the touch of a button. Thank you.
David. So you're not going to finish the last few stanzas?
Is there 2 small stanzas?
The expat one has a 4th, 5th. I actually had several after that.
I must have changed it for the actual book.
It's okay if you don't want to conclude it, but there are a few more not stanzas, but rather sections in the expat version anyway.
So it goes on for quite a long time after that.
Okay.
That's
okay.
okay. Thank
That's
you.
fine. Man, David, this is great though. This is a really great piece of modernist poetry. It reminds me of Eliot and Pound. And I love how the Hamlet part is so good. And it does what these great modernist poets do, which is it takes something classical and it removes all of the exalted pretense from it, right? The line about being like Hamlet except without the dead father, it just being reduced to this kind of constant uncertainty and ambiguity without that greater driving force. It's a great line. And the slime trail, the snail measuring your future through the trail of slime moment is, oh my god, what a vivid image. And all throughout this there are so many moments that really completely annihilate the pretensions we have about the importance of our lives and the importance of all of these self-indulgent narratives we have, and it's just there's so many really vivid, beautiful. Well, beautiful is the right word, but it also feels like the wrong word, right? There are so many vivid, poignant, effective images in this piece, and such a sense of like meaning and the loss of meaning here. It's really fucking good, David. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for reading. I love your shit, and it's good to have you back too. I think this is your second time, so.
Yeah, thank you.
And I do not think that sorry, Blick's not here, right? So I think it's only Gigi that's left. Unfortunately, what was I going to say? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I got distracted for a second there. We're getting pretty late tonight, so I don't think we're going to do an open mic unless someone has something they absolutely positively have to read. So I think we're going to close out the night with Gigi, and then if someone has a piece they want to read, send us a DM and you can read it next week. Okay. Gigi, the floor is yours.
My cat just walked out of the room, so hopefully he won't come back in and start screaming. I just have two short ones. Yeah, I'll just read these. There's also pictures on the second page if you want to look at those, but I'll just read here. The first one's called "My Belly Contains a Poppy Field." My right ankle contains one 3.5 by 12 millimeter screw, one 3.5 by 14 millimeter screw, one 3.5 by 18 millimeter screw, one 3.5 by 20 millimeter screw, one 3.5 by 22 millimeter screw, one 3.5 by 65 millimeter screw, and two 2.7 by 44 millimeter screws. And after Dr. Gorman inserted these 8 screws, she gave me a bottle of flowers to help me sleep. And the second one is called "I spent the past several years yellowing my teeth. Typing is the only way to not masturbate while using the computer. Still, I find a way." And the second one is just like x-rays from my ankle, which is currently healing. Yeah, that's all I got.
Gigi, I love that first poem because it's so viscerally uncomfortable. Like you have, it's just pure, like simple, basic detail. It's like it's almost like a shopping list, right? But every screw that you add to that poem, I feel in my own fucking leg, and they get bigger, and they get bigger, and they get bigger, and like your like discomfort and terror as a reader like grows with every screw. It's really good, and I don't know what to say about the last one. It's fucking funny. It's very much like a Gigi poem, and as usual, it's very funny.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me read.
Yeah, thank you, man. So as I said, I think we're gonna end it there. Oh yeah, and it's really fucking narcissistic of me to not say this until I looked down and saw that Rudy said it. But get better, man. Heal up.
I will. Yeah, I got another month and a half, and then I can walk. But yeah, I'll get better.
Yeah, I don't want to reduce you to your fucking poetry here, man. You're a human being. Feel better.
I'll tell Sheila what really happened, so she'll feel bad for being the one pointing out to me, "Hey, Gigi on Instagram, it looks like you got top surgery."
That's funny though. I do have rockin' tits. That's why I'm not putting my webcam down. I don't want to show them off yet. They're still healing too.
How did you bust your ankle?
Literally just slipped on some gravel walking down a slope. I don't have a cool story. Just fucked up, forgot how to walk.
I did the same thing to my knee. I busted my kneecap crossing the street.
God, that sucks.
I know. I mean, it's fucking horrible to not have some dangerous story to attach to it, because every moment can be dangerous then, I guess. I mean, now I stopped driving it after that, because like Josh, I was like, nope, I'm taking the risk factor as far down as I can now.
But
Makes sense.
as they say in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. So
does death. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's a great note to end it on. Any moment could be the moment you die or seriously injure yourself. This has been Misery Loves Company. No, but I guess we are closing up shop though. So as usual, I'm gonna leave the Zoom meeting up for Christ knows how long. But I am gonna end the recording now. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, we do this every fucking Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific or whatever, 3 a.m. in Berlin. If you have work you want to read, just show up or just shoot us a DM on Twitter at Misery Tourism. We tweet out the link right before we start. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys. Thank you to everyone who came. This was a fantastic night. New readers, old readers, a great variety of pieces. Yeah, it's been a good fucking night, guys. All right, that's it. That's it.